Aya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhani Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhani Aya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhani Yashodanandana Gajjandarandana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Yamunatira Prabhupada Jai. ISKCON BPT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Jai. Jai Om Srimad Paramahamsa Tripikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vindaki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vindaki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru.
Shri Guru and Lord.
Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, the translated commentator and our spiritual master. Nashtapaisha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatam Shloke Bhakti Bhakti Naistiki. Regular penance and classes on Srimad Bhagavatam, by my rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil. And loving devotion to the Supreme Lord who is glorified in transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 On this 24th day of May 2017 in SanDiego, a reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are on Canto 3, the status quo, chapter 23, Devahuti's Lamentation, text number 13. Sarvakam Udham Divyam
Sarvakam Udham Divyam
Sarvaratna Samanditam
Sarvaratna Samanditam
Sarvadhyudakam
Sarvadhyudakam
Manistam Vairupasritam
Manistam Vairupasritam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvanyupachiyodarkam
Sarvanyupachiyodarkam
Manistambharupaskritam
Manisambharupaskritam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvanyupachiyodarkam
Sarvanyupachiyodarkam
Manistambharupaskritam
Manisambharupaskritam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvadyatpachayodarkam
Sarvanyupachiyodarkam
Manisambharupaskritam
Manisambharupaskritam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvaridyapachayodarkam
Sarvanyupachiyodarkam
Manistambharupaskritam
Manisambharupaskritam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvakamadagam divyam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvaratna samanvitam
Sarvaridya upayodarkam
Sarvanyupachiyodarkam
Manistambhai upaskritam
Manisambharupaskritam
Sarva,
Sarva,
all,
Kama,
Kama,
desires,
Dugam, yielding, Divyam,
wonderful,
Sarvaratna, all sorts of jewels, Samanvitam, bedecked with, Sarva, all, Riddhi, of wealth, Upachaya, increase, Udarkam, gradual, money, of precious stones, Sambhaji, with pillars, Upaskritam, adorned. Translation. It. What is it?
The aerial mansion.
The aerial mansion, the castle in the sky, as Prabhu says in the Prabhu. It was a wonderful structure, bedecked with all sorts of jewels, adorned with pillars of precious stones, and capable of yielding whatever one desired. It was equipped with every form of furniture and wealth, which tended to increase in the course of time. Unlike this furniture. We need to reupholster this proportion. The castle created in the sky by Kardama Muni may be called a castle in the air. But by his mystic power of yoga, Kardama Muni actually constructed a huge castle in the air. To our feeble imagination, a castle in the sky is an impossibility. But if we scrutinizingly consider the matter, we can understand that it is not impossible at all. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead can create so many planets, carrying millions of castles in the air, a perfect yogi like Kardama Muni can easily construct one castle in the air. The castle is described as Sarva Kama Dukam, yielding whatever one desired. It was full of jewels. Even the pillars were made of pearls and valuable stones. There's a whole line missing at the end of this purport. I'm going to need the book so I can read it. It's missing in this database. You have to fix it. I noticed it yesterday. This is not a complete sentence. But in the book, it is. You'll have it. You'll see it on your device here. All right, so I'll read that again. Yeah. Okay, resuming. These valuable jewels, These valuable jewels and stones were not subject to deterioration, but were everlastingly and increasingly opulent. We sometimes hear of castles thus bedecked on the surface of this earth also. The castles constructed by Lord Krishna for his 16,108 wives were so bedecked with jewels that there was no need of lamplight during the night. Do you have that? You have that? I don't have it here. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnanandana-Shalakaya Chakshur-Militamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances to him and all members of Srimadbhagavatam. This is a wonderful structure, as Prabhu says here. So, now this is, first of all, we have to look at it as science, right? This is one of the things that was remarked yesterday by Prabhu, is that these powers, these yogic powers, sound fantastical, unbelievable. And for a long time, people thought, yeah, in India they're making all these things up, there's all these stories. But actually, if you investigate, some people have investigated, and these powers actually exist. Prabhu told himself of an incident in his childhood where a friend told him, I understood, that there was a yogi had visited his friend's house, and he had this power of, was it prakamya, I think it is, or prapti, where you can get anything from anywhere. Sounds amazing. So the yogi told, as the child, he said, well, what would you like? We'd like a pomegranate from Kashmir. They're known to be very, high quality pomegranates. So I don't know if he meditated or, said some mantra, but then he said, go look in the room next door. There's another bedroom or something. Looked in the room, and there was a freshly broken branch with several pomegranates on it, from Kashmir. So and yesterday it was mentioned, Prabhu heard this story about it. It was in Delhi, I think, that when the British Raj was there, they were trying to impose Western ethics and morality, and so this tradition of the yogis walking naked in the street is not acceptable. So that was against the law. So one day in Delhi there was this yogi, and he was naked, and so they arrested him. It's against the law. They put him in a jail, and the next day he's out. What's this? He must have broken out. They put him again, came out. He was just doing the anima siddhi, and he was getting out through the keyhole and then, expanding back to his nose. So these are simply fine ways of manipulating material energy, which are unknown to Western science, as Prabhu was pointed out. They try to imitate, they fly in the sky with the airplanes, and they burrow deep in the ground, with the subways and so many things. Now they're miniaturizing. I read they're miniaturizing the drones, so that they can have these little tiny insect drones that can spy on people like this. The forefront of their technology is almost always in weaponry, way beyond what we can imagine. So, but here we see, now what was the motive? The motive, you always have to look at the motive. Why did Karma Muni create this airplane? There was a verse, remember? Remember? To please his wife. In other words, he was in trance. She was serving him for a long, long time. So much so that she became emaciated. She became, the hair isn't being combed, the whole thing. So then he's finally, he said, well, she's serving me, and his heart softened. After all, it's his wife, and he had a desire to marry, and so he decided, for the pleasure of his wife, he decided, well, okay, let's have this vacation, if you will, and it will be for the sake of actually producing children. They'll have the sex for producing children. Now, what he said was that when what is translated as is when the child comes, he said to Swayambhuvamana, then I'll leave. But actually, he didn't leave until the 10th child came, because the first 9 were female girls, and they grew up, and he gave them all to the different Prajapatis, and so that part of the duty, which is what Swayambhuva was also worried about, was populating the universe, was being taken care of. And then the 10th child was Kapiladev. And then when he, there's no account of his childhood here. He just can't, so this is part of the mystic power. After all, he's Krishna, God. So now he could rightly leave. And so he had done his duty for, with Devahuti, it had the marriage and the propagation of the children's going on, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead had come through him. So then he took sannyas. So, but now we're launching on a description of the period in which he's enjoying, the so-called enjoying. But there's always that background of that he's within the realm of all the rules and regulations. He's doing what he's supposed to do for the purpose of having children, of pleasing his wife. There isn't just this idea of gross sense gratification. When we read this description, and even it says whatever one desires and all these different things, but there's an element of it that's service. You see, this is the difference. This is the whole idea in the Varnashram. We always remember, the Varnashram. Bhagavatam is like wholly and solely about Krishna, devotional service, the great avatars. That's the whole purpose of the book. So even at the beginning, in the second chapter, you find this verse. Prabhu would always quote: "Atak pumbir vidashresta varnashrama vibhagasha svanustitasya dharmasya samsiddhi haritoshanam." That all of the different elements of varna and ashram, or Dvija Shrestha, this is Sutta speaking to the great sages, headed by Shamakarishi. Varnashrama vibhagasha suvanustitasya. Suvanustitasya really means everyone nicely following their duty, But the perfection is, samsiddhi is haritoshanam. If that's not there, then it may be so paka according to the rules and regulations externally, but it's useless. The same idea is there. If your religion, your dharma, you may follow very nicely according to tradition, according to like my grandma taught me, whatever. But if it doesn't awaken your desire to hear and to understand the Supreme Person, hear about and understand the Supreme Person of God, it's shrameya vikevam. It's a complete waste of time. So this Varna and Ashram is really a means of organizing society with so many duties and so many restrictions. But the whole purpose of it is to bring one to the point of renunciation and serving Krishna. The Shudras, it's understood, they may not get to that point of renunciation. But there are so many restrictions. You read the Shudra Dharma in the seventh canto, and there's so many things. They're supposed to have this service attitude, Hare Krishna. For the higher caste, and they're meant to be taken care of. You read Krishna Leela, how they have all these ceremonies, and then so many garments, so many gifts were given to everybody, the Sudras especially. The musicians. The musicians is a Sudra occupation. They become fully satisfied. They get all these opulent garments and gifts, and they're fully satisfied. So that's the whole purpose of it. But when it becomes simply this caste consciousness, and there's the lording it over from the Brahminical caste, which really is a non-Brahminical attitude and activity, they lose their status as Brahmins when they try to lord it over the other caste, then the whole thing becomes corrupt. It becomes degraded. And you find in the West, of course they don't know anything about Varna and Ashram, but the classes are still there. You still have your intellectual class, you have your charismatic class, those who are leaders of men, and also part of the military. There's whole people who are into the military, right, fighting. And you certainly have your money class, those who are into making money, and some are really good at it. And you have your manual laborers, and people who are good with their hands, can fix cars and things like that. So, what is it? The purpose of pleasing the Lord with the activity is totally forgotten. And so what happens is it devolves. The Brahmas become corrupted. The intellectual class becomes corrupted by being employed first, by the defense industry. They go in and they take the smartest students from MIT and so forth and say, hey, we can offer you $150,000 a year to start. You just come here and you do the research in our very comfortable lab and everything. You'll have everything taken care of, a beautiful house. Oh yeah, that's what I'm looking for. But what you're doing is you're creating horrible works meant to destroy the world. In the 16th chapter. And as Prabhu pointed out in the Ishopanishad, this was written during the days of the intense of the Cold War. The communists have the bombs, and the capitalists have the bombs, and eventually they'll use the bombs. Of course, later when the movement grew, he actually wrote Ishopanishad in India, brought the manuscript with him. He was serializing in his BTG at first. He made the caveat, unless the Sankirtan movement spreads. So we're trying to save the world here. But it's a total corruption. So the Brahminical class gets corrupted, and the military class gets corrupted because they're also serving in the behest of the capitalists. The bankers and they were running everything, and all the money, billions and billions of dollars. So it's certainly not being used to build temples and glorification of the Lord. Can you imagine if even a small fraction of that money is? Did you know that Apple has sold it away out of the country, away from the tax threat, $181 billion abroad in tax havens? That's obscene. And they're just the highest one. Then you have these other tech companies all have this money abroad so they don't get taxed. What that money could be used for, you can imagine. Building beautiful temples, prasadam, distribution, education. It's demonic. So what's happening here? Now the castle in the sky. Now what Prabhupada is saying in the purport is that we shouldn't doubt it. Because it sounds like, castle in the sky is a metaphor for something that doesn't exist. In Western, parlance. But Prabhupada said, yes, he actually did construct a huge castle in the air. So, okay, we have all of these planets floating in the air, and there's so many castles. In other words, it's inconceivable to us because we have this very crippled understanding of Krishna's real powers, of God's powers, and how they can be invested in someone to do things that are amazing. Even though, even today, what's going on today in terms of technology, computers, and all the amazing things was inconceivable, would be inconceivable 25, 30 years ago, or even less. Just the idea that everybody has a phone in his pocket. I mean, we go back to the days and dial up, dial the phone. What's going on? I got to reach my, and phone booths. There used to be things called phone booths. Not that you could call it, and in a way that was nicer because that meant you couldn't be reached all the time. Now people expect that you'll be reached all the time. If they text you, what happened? I texted you 5 minutes ago. You didn't answer me. Are you ignoring me? And this whole thing with Facebook and people getting flamed, and now they have live on Facebook, and it's crazy. There's always isn't there this account, did Prabhupada tell this, where there was this idea of, was it Arjun, who was going to get some technique or technology, and Krishna tried to convince him not to do it, right? Because it leads to degradation. And this whole society, it glorifies that. How we can manipulate this material energy to become even more trapped and more entangled in the illusions that it's created. So, this science of yoga, of Ashtanga yoga, which Kardamuni was expert in, produces these siddhis. And the problem is, just like with the modern technology, with the yogis, they become enamored of the siddhis. If they're not firm devotees, Kardamuni was a pure devotee, but they can become, they can lead us to deviate from real yoga. And that's why it said, Srila Chaitanya famously said, Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakali ashanta, Krishna bhakta nishkama ateva shanta. This idea of peace, which is really prominent in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, what is the quality of real peace? And he winds it all up. He summarizes it. Vihaya kama nyuksavan pumam chadrinixpraha. Nirmamo nadahankara sashantim adhigachati. I think the second to last verse in the second chapter. There's so many other things about, being like an ocean, all the desires are flowing in and you're not disturbed. So how does one get to that point? To be desireless? Because these desires, these material desires, after all, what's keeping us here, keep us coming back. In modern society doesn't have any idea. The whole idea is to cultivate those desires and try to fulfill them, right?
If you don't desire enough in this material world, then you have to go to the psychiatrist. You can fire up that mode of passion. So much of the psychiatry is bringing you from the mode of ignorance, depressed, no affect, I don't like anybody, to at least the mode of passion, where you want to do something, material and enjoy, right? Oh, this person is normal now. But Krishna says, no. And I'm just reading chapter 14, which is all about the modes of nature. You come to the mode of goodness, which is a platform. That's not a goal, it's a platform upon which you can actually start to understand transcendence. And in the mode of goodness, there is the natural thoughtfulness, the inquiry into philosophical matters, and hopefully you meet a devotee, you become interested in transcendental inquiry. But there's a sense of happiness because the passions aren't moving you so much. To be in the mode of passion means to be always agitated. This word udvigna we were studying last night in the Gita. It comes up again and again. Tatsara vanne sudavaya dehinam sadasamudvigna dhyana sadgana. These are words of Prahlad Maharaj. His father asked him, what did you learn today? What's the best thing you learned? He was hoping he would tell him, we learned like this Machiavellian thing, who's the enemy, who's the friend. He didn't do anything of the sort. He said, oh my dear, best of the demons. Prabhu points out, he didn't call him father, he called him the best of the demons. The best thing, the word sadhu in this context means best, the best thing. Tat sadhu manne. My opinion, father, the best thing I learned yesterday. For whom? For the dehinams, for the embodied souls. Who are what? In one line, he gives a very concise description. Sada samudvigna dhyana sadgana, whose intelligence or consciousness is always udvigna, always disturbed. Why? Because they're holding on tight to what is impermanent. We're taking shelter of a sinking boat. The fallible soldiers. Naturally, that's going to cause anxiety. We're holding on to try to enjoy things that are slipping through our fingers, abilities. So this is constant stuff. So he says to his father, Father, this is my advice to you. Father didn't want to hear it. Truth to power. Hitvat apatam griyamanda kupam. Give up the Griyavedi household, which is simply a field where this passionate desire is cultivated. Materialistic household life. Give it up. Hitva. Atmapatam. What is Atmapatam? That situation which obscures or impedes your progress of the Atma, of the soul. That's Atmapatam. Hitva Atmapatam Griyamanda Kupam, the blind well of materialistic family life. Why blind? Because you can't see the truth anymore. You're completely covered by lust. Then what to do? Giving up is not enough. You got to do something. Go to the forest in the Kamadera. This means Madhuvan. This means Vrindavan forest. Panam gato yad, and then Haramashriyeta. Take shelter of Hari. That's the last thing Hiranyakashipu wanted to hear. He had spent years, performing austerities, becoming immortal. He thought, so that he could kill Vishnu, his arch enemy, because Vishnu had killed his brother, Hiranyaksha, as Brahma. So naturally, now at this point, this is the first question. Hiranyakashipu laughed at that point. He thought, he laughed at what had happened, and he looked at the Shandanamarka. What have you been teaching him? And he said, we didn't teach him this. This is something, he learned in the womb. So, but this point, that the material desires cultivated in any situation cause one's mind to be disturbed and obscure any desire, any little desire for self-realization. The mode of passion is not suitable for that. The mode of goodness is, you got a better chance. And that's also not sure, certainly without contact with devotee, but it's a more fertile field for the seed of the creeper of devotion to be planted. That's why you find many of the people who join, at least in the early days, even now, they're already vegetarians, or they understand, which is a big step forward, getting out of the mode of passion. That's Pariksit said, who will give up hearing about Krishna except the Pashudnas, the killers of the animals. And our commentator said that also means killing oneself also. So, Karamuni is creating this castle, And we're going to read about how he goes around all of the heavenly places and the heavenly planets, and and imagine you already got your portable ideal place, but they went to even other places where the atmosphere was perfect, and they enjoyed. Enjoyed means they had religious sex life.
What?
Religious sex life, and sex life.
No, sex means for children. They didn't.
They had. That's what I said. They were engaging in religious sex.
I'll ask for questions.
Yeah. So, and then from all of that, these 9 daughters were born, and eventually Kapila came, and then as we'll read in the next chapters, Karumuri left. He didn't leave. He didn't have to drag himself away from it. This was his mentality all along, because he was controlled, he was trained, he was in Varnashram. And at a certain point, there's a limit to it. Prabhupada was very, very adamant about this point. Not for all the days. You may live with a wife and restrictions, and you have your wonderful children and raise them and so forth. But then it's not supposed to be for all the days, because there's a period at the end of life that's meant just for renunciation, preparing for hopefully going back to Godhead. And if you led the proper life without increasing the desires, increasing the material desires, then that becomes feasible, the renunciation period. But it's always there. I mean, he said, in letters at the beginning of the movement, if possible, stay brahmachari, if possible. So, but there's these other facilities. Whatever you do, don't just throw up your hands and give up the process because you're overwhelmed with sex desire. Learn how to direct it and control it, and do it in such a way that is within the realm of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhu would point out to see, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had so many children. One of them was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Lali Prasad was there, devotees. So, and Prabhupada gave his own family. He was born in a devotee family, raised by devotees' mother and father, especially his father, who said, no, we're not going to send him to England to learn to be a lawyer. Can you imagine what a lawyer Prabhupada would have been? He would have won every case. His father said, no, you'll get corrupted there. He'll stay here, and he can have his family here and everything. And he learned the Mridanga. The mother said, what did he learn Mridanga from? He learned Mridanga. How wonderful it is. Prabhupada played the Mridanga on that first album. Krishna sent the Mridanga. Otherwise he's playing a little bongo drum, right? Which is great. But to have that Mridanga on that album, which is immortalized, you know how it happened? The night before, I think I know where he got that Mridanga. Because while I lived on the Lower East Side in 1968, I went to the Paradox restaurant. That's where I became a vegetarian, more or less. And right next to the Paradox, maybe 1 or 2 stores over, was an Indian musical instrument store, believe it or not. Right there in 1968, because that's the center of the hippies. The guy was a Scientologist. He had a little e-meter in there. He tried to convert me. Anyway, that's another story. Yeah. Would you like to have an e-meter? Luckily, Krishna protected me from that.
What was that called?
Is it e-meter? That's how they tell how many. You don't know? We have so many. What do they call them? The little ghosts that are affecting your consciousness. And when you become clear of them, they become clear. It costs you many thousands of dollars to go up to different. Then you can become like.
So we tried to convert you to what?
To Scientology.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that. I mentioned
Sorry,
Scientology.
thank you.
But in there were tablas, and there was a veena and sitars. There were a lot of sitars. Ravi Shankar was popular, and I don't remember seeing the mridanga there, but there probably was a mridanga. So this kid walks into the storefront the night before the recording with the mridanga. Prabhupada's eyes lit up. Bring it here. Yeah, I've seen a mridanga since India. Yeah. And he starts playing, and the devotees are jaws drop. He's so expert, And I don't know if the mridanga was there for the kirtan. Maybe it was for that night, that evening kirtan. But it was the kid's mridanga,
And he wasn't a devotee, he was just interested. And so they asked him, look, tomorrow we have this recording session. Can you bring it back tomorrow for the recording session? And he said, yes, okay. But they doubted whether he really was going to do it, But sure enough, he came back there and Prabhu took that mridanga, and he's the one who played the mridanga on that album. That's why it sounded, the mridanga really increased. So Krishna makes these arrangements. And really, just to compare, this is amazing, yogic things, and there's so many things in the Bhagavatam that are, really amazing, But as Prabhu pointed out, he met so many people, during his time. And there was a fellow who was a magician. That's kind of a sleight of hand, And there was a little, he did some tricks for Prabhupada, And Prabhupada was, smiling. And he says, well, can you do this one trick I'd like to ask you to do? Can you end birth and death? He said, no, Swamiji, I can't do that. So that's really a much more valuable gift, to be able to awaken the faith of innocent people, ignorant people, in bhakti, and inspire them to chant Hare Krishna, and really make progress on the path back to Godhead, and bring some people back to Godhead. This is probably much greater yogic power. There's great yogic power to disarm even famous people. And you can see how Krishna made so many arrangements. The first Krishna book, there's so many stories. How the first Krishna book was printed. Now, Prabhupada was, he was working on Bhagavatam. He was working on second canto, third canto, which is an enormous job. There was no end of things to it. And he had already written the TLC, and the Easy Journey was out, and the Gita was there. But he noticed that the devotees didn't really know too much about who Krishna was. They heard him tell some stories and this and that. So he thought he really needed to stop everything and give them the 10th canto. This is what happened. And I don't know what the year was, maybe 69, 70. So by this time he was working with the dictation machine. So he said all the dictation was going, the tapes were being sent to Boston and being transcribed by Jayaweda Das Brahmachari. Maybe Jay is written, Bhakti Jay, I forget, that was his first engagement. And Arundhati, Pradyumna's wife, that was her engagement. So they're typing, and every so often they're making mistakes, which we caught much later, and then, then the manuscript was all done, and somehow they had it all composed, but where are they going to get the money to print it in significant quantities, So by that time, George Harrison had been met, and he was engaged, Shyamasundar. This is 69, late 69. So the story is that Shyamasundar went to, Prabhupada, I think, told him to ask George to fund the first printing, which was, what, $19,000, I think, something like that. It's a lot of money in those days, 69, multiplied by 3 or something today, or 4 or 5. So, the story is they're sitting at dinner. I think it's just the two of them, because he really had a nice relation with Shyamasundar. And Shyamasundar had just broached the question, and they had this great relationship with him, so he was kind of a little uneasy about it, but he said, we need some money to print this. And the story, the way I heard it is that George was kind of grave, he didn't answer. And then suddenly there was a storm, and all the lights went out. And there was this big, unseasonable storm, just beating away, I guess at the manor or wherever he lived, and lightning, the whole thing, And so maybe when the lights came back on, they got some cables in there, I forget exactly how it was. And George says something like, "How can I refuse?" In other words, he saw that, and this was characteristics of the time. He would see meetings and things, even with acid all. How can I refuse? This is like a sign that yes, I should do it, and he did it. And those things happen all the time with Prabhupada. Just at the right time, the Madanga comes, it's the right time, this person comes, So that's, if you have Krishna, the Yogeshwara on your side, who cares about these, these cities, working so hard for these cities, and they go to your head. You know, you become very proud. The Vasa Muni. I had my own experience, a very, you know, simple experience, but it showed me that this happened. Before I joined, I was a disciple of Amalabhakta, believe it or not.
Really?
He wasn't Amalabhakta then. He was, I think, Shiva Prem Swami or something like that. He was the head of the New York branch of another yoga society. Yogi Gupta had come over in the 50s, and he started Hatha Yoga. So, you know, I went for my health, and it was, you know, I went back again. It helped me. So then the guru came. Twice a year, I think he would come. And Amalabhakta, later he complained that this is one of the reasons why he quit, because then he said, well, you have to rent me a penthouse, you know, so he can now have darshan with all, you know, people. And he would give initiation if you paid a certain amount of money. And so I'm standing in line waiting to go see him. I gave the minimum $10 so I could just have 5 minutes, you know. I wasn't really into it that much. But the fellow behind me, if I got initiated, who knows what happened. So this fellow behind me, he was dressed like a yogi, you know. He had some kind of, you know, all white and everything. He didn't have a loincloth on, but he was dressed up. And he was a young kid. He couldn't have been more than 21. And he was all ready to tell everyone all about his experiences and his powers that he was getting from pranayama. You know, it was symptomatic of what the real yogis go through when they get real powers. Real yogis today, every 12 years, they all come out of the hills, right, out of the Himalayas, the Nagababas. So, and they're the real thing. They look like they're 50. They were 300 years old. Long hair, right? I've seen pictures. And so maybe it was the last one or the one before. They come out en masse because they want to, you know, get liberation and bathe at the exact right time in the right place. You know? So there's groups of them. There's just some different tribes, you know, and they're very severe. And you can imagine just do it without. Imagine all, you know, what happens to your heart. No Hare Krishna. You know, no deities, no devotee kirtan and all of this softening, but it's just all that, you know, hard edge, you know, austerity to come to that point of these powers. So there was a rumble between different groups of them who wanted to bathe, be the first to bathe. That's the honor, you know. I mean, all the masses are waiting back, you know, and the cops, the soldiers come in, you know, and broke them up and everything like that. That's Vaishnava. I mean, it's like antithetical. It just means they became very proud, and the ego was there for them. And we see the Vasa Muni, you know, he ready to kill Ambarish because of envy. You know, he was humble first. But so the yogic powers themselves are nothing that we covet. But they can also be used in Krishna's service, you know, in certain instances. And this is one of them where he creates this castle, and it's ultimately for service. Okay. Any questions? What were you going to say, Raj?
Yeah, you know, I looked at the verses in the purport, and you know, when we say sex or sex life, you know, we have the conception that is prominent in this day and age. It's the you know, the climax, etc., that discharges semen. My conviction is I don't think there was discharge of semen all those years. I'm looking at the purport. It's sex life, but it's more like foreplay if we want to put it in today's terminology. In his sex, was praised. He was sexually stimulated. He enjoyed with his wife for many, many years in that part of Mount Meru, but his sex indulgence was praised by many, many siddhas, beings who have attained perfection. Why? Because it was intended to produce good progeny for the good of universal affairs. But as soon as he wanted to produce children, it specifically says he discharged semen 9 times into his wife, and the 9 daughters were born on simultaneously.
Oh, one time. There's one.
He expanded himself into 9 forms of yogi power.
Oh, okay.
And still, she was more lusty or excited than he was, and they got 9 daughters.
Uh-huh.
And he starts to go away. You know, I need protection. They're going to marry. I'll be left alone. And so then one more time.
Oh, then he comes back. Okay.
He stays, but he discharges semen one more time, and then Kapila did.
I see. All right.
So
I'm sorry, I hadn't read
about
it.
the conception of they're enjoying all these hundreds of years. It's not, well, you know, it's it's like, yeah, they're into it, and it's so much.
It's just
more
subtle, but subtle.
in
Okay.
culture.
All right. I'm sorry. I haven't read ahead and reviewed that part. I forgot that part. Yeah. So it's a whole different ball game in a sense. In other words, there's this ideal place, but it's all on mostly subtle sex life.
Music.
Yeah. So the enjoyment is there. But that this kind of a euphemism to say enjoyed. When Prabhu used the word they enjoyed, generally that means they had sex life.